Broadcasting live on the UnitedWest.org AM radio network and simulcasting on DirecTV, iHeartRadio, Roku, and the World Wide Web, this is Enemies of the State with Tom Trento.
All right, welcome to Tuesday, June 9th, part 2 of our two-part Monday, Tuesday special entitled Rockin' Monday and Tuesday. Glad to have you with us. My name is Tom Trento, your host. Name of the show, Enemies of the State. What kind of name is that, Tom? Very simple. The United States of America has many, I can't answer this right now, but if you could call Mark, the guy in a different part of the facility, he's looking for some answers from me that I don't know if I can provide.
Okay.
The United States of America has many enemies, and we have dedicated ourselves, our band of brothers here, and there's a handful of us that work on site and others in different places, to be educators. That's what we do. We educate. We're a nonprofit organization. We're recognized by the IRS as a charitable organization. We serve for the public good, and we expose the enemies, whether they're President Obama and his enemy ideology of leftist Marxism, which has failed for a century, but people come along and they think they're smart enough to reintroduce a failed idea in a way in which to make it work, and typically there are dopey enough people in a culture to buy into that, and you have, for a season, a reinvigorated interest in a failed system like Marxism. But when you eliminate some of the workload of Marxism and you just provide the benefits of Marxism, then you can get it to kind of work for a while. Obamacare, EBT cards, unemployment, record highs, all of this. When that happens, we here at the United West have to expose the president and his administration. So they are ideological enemies of a conservative Weltanschauung, a conservative worldview that says inherently people are evil, inherently people are productive, and the government is a systematic system to keep those in balance, to suppress evil and to enhance good. Not to provide everybody with food, shelter, clothing, and everything else that they need. That's not the role of government at all. But when some folks choose to injure those who have contracted in this country under the Constitution, we've signed a pact saying we will live as brothers and sisters under these laws. When others come in and say, sorry, we don't follow your laws, we're going to screw with you and mess up your country, we have to expose them, thus the enemies of the state concept of exposing outside ideological enemies, and the foremost of which is Islam right now. If you noticed, I don't qualify Islam. I don't disrespect the world-renowned scholars. I don't disrespect the history books. I don't disrespect many millennia of Islamic leaders who tell us what Islam is. How do I, simple Tom Trento, in my wallet,
Okay.
in my bag, in my office.
That is the correct one, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. We have wonderful people on staff here that need answers. While we're doing a live show on WSBR Radio 740 AM. But when these people come and want to destroy the external forces, not our staff, the external forces, they are enemies of the state of America, and we have to expose them. And that's what we do. Thus the title of the show. Well, how do we do that? Well, we are a team of men and women, many women involved with us, and the only requirement is you need to be called to do this work. It's a calling. Once you enter into the battle with us, you will A, not make any money, B, be completely unemployable, and C, risk your life. Okay?
That's
So-
such a great, you want to put that on your resume. You
I'd like to advertise on the side of a bus. Wanted. People don't want to make money, will never be able to work again, and you could die doing this work. We'll get a lot of people signing up for that. Thus, a calling, and I mean that very sincerely, that those of us who have found our way to be working together here in the state of Florida and other places where we work, we have determined the common foundation upon which we stand is that we are called to do this. We're at such a point in history, and we have been blessed with whatever tools we happen to have, that when joined together, these tools form a tool chest that's quite effective at fixing things. And the thing in particular is the Islamic jihad against us, enabled by President Obama, and with Israel in its sight. That's a lot of our work. And we ask again, we buy this time to be on the air. We literally hit millions of people for pennies. We ask you to please graciously, seriously make a monthly commitment. You can go to our webpage, theunitedwest.org, top right-hand corner, donate securely. Go there and please make a monthly donation so that we can continue our very effective work.
Yeah, and people ask us all the time, they ask, why do you do this crazy nonsense? And, my answer is, well, if you knew if it was 1938 and you knew what Hitler was going to do, what would you do? And it's as simple as that. And then, the money and everything else like that becomes secondary, and life becomes, that little bit more principled.
Yeah, and 3 days ago, Mark, was June 6th, a very significant day, and many historians call it the most important day in the history of the United States, simply because on June 6th, it's supposed to be the 5th, but whether belayed the disembarkment.
Right.
Very important word, disembarkment. What does that start with?
Dis.
No, what letter does disembarkment start with? When asked years later of General then President Eisenhower, why'd you name it D-Day, June 6th, 1944? Through his aide, or his assistant at that time, he said that the answer that General Eisenhower gave as to why it was named D-Day was very simple. Every attack through naval attack through the sea has a disembarkment date, the date that the soldiers are supposed to disembark from the boats and go on shore. And disembarkments are commonplace in wars wherever there's oceans. And the one in Normandy, the D-Day there, the D, according to Eisenhower, stood for Disembarkment Day, and it was June 6th. Pretty simple. Though historians take it back 100 years, actually 100 years from now, but back into World War I, when some of the lexicon for wartime categorizing was H hour, the hour something would happen on D-Day.
Right.
So they would say this attack is going to take place at 0400 on the 18th, D-Day, H hour. But I would go with Eisenhower's explanation as to why it was called D-Day. But more importantly, you said 1938, if you knew what was going to happen, what would you do? Well, in 1944, a bunch of those guys, 150,000 U.S. soldiers on that initial disembarkment that had to run up against the German wall, the Atlantic wall, they had no idea of really what they were going to run into, but they realized that they were running for the right reason, running for this great country. And that's why we call them the greatest
And
generation.
trust me, they weren't doing it for money or pay.
No, 6,000 died that first few hours. 6,000 Americans died in the first 2 hours of disembarking at Normandy.
Yeah, I think the best
At
rendition
Utah.
of that whole scene was Saving Private Ryan. The first few minutes of that, you really got a sense of the fear and panic and terror that it. I mean, I'm trying to think of myself on that boat. I don't know if I could have, done it. I really don't. I just don't. It takes so much courage to go out there, but then you and every one of your other buddies are doing it, and you're fighting for your buddies is who you're fighting for in your country, the guy next to you in your country.
Yeah, and when the ramp came down on the amphibious boats, they had to go, and they went, and if you didn't get mowed down, you were on the beachhead, and then now what? This is at Utah.
And if you didn't drown, that was the other thing.
If you didn't drown, the other 5 disembarkment locations, the aerial attack had been somewhat on point, destroyed some of the German defense mechanisms. But at Utah Beach, it didn't work. They didn't hit the spot, the air power.
Right.
And now they're there, and this is where the Rangers really came, the Army Rangers. They had to figure out a way to go up the 100-foot cliff.
that is an amazing story.
It's an amazing story. Very, very brave guys going up and taking out some of those machine guns.
A sheer cliff with Nazis shooting down at you and throwing stuff on top of you.
Now you get up on there, and now you got to go through the hedge rows.
Hedge rows, right?
Remember we interviewed Bill Langford, Mark's dad.
Yeah.
He had to go through the hedge rows a couple days later. We're going to have him back on. We're going to do another special with him. He's like 93 years old now. He helped liberate Buchenwald.
Right.
And
after I don't know if we could do that type of invasion today. You go there and you look what Eisenhower how he had to talk to the 101st Airborne, the 82nd Airborne, knowing his best estimate calculations were going to be minimum of 25% loss of life, and he's sitting there talking to them, and he's knowing that. I don't know if we could have that type of
stuff.
I
think that argues for a couple of things. Eisenhower also on that day wrote a little letter, put it in his pocket, and wrote a letter basically saying we failed and all the blame rests on me. He was the Grand Marshal. He was the supreme commander of Operation Overlord and was willing to take all of the heat. And in a similar way that we're facing an existential and a realistic threat today with Islamic jihad, and we had right after World War I, Cold War, we had Eisenhower as a president who had a military background. We would hope that our next president would have a military background. That doesn't look like it's going to happen. Sadly, I don't know how many I know last time I looked, Hillary didn't serve in the military, did she?
Well, no.
No. So on the Republican side, of the 200 or 300 people running for office, how many have served in the military? Do you know?
I'm not sure, actually.
I think
not Rubio, not
Cruz. Cruz served in either the Mexican or the Canadian Army, I think. No, the Castro's army. His father was actually a exile. He was Canadian, and his father's from.
I'm not really sure, Tom.
Well, we know Rick Perry served in the Air Force, flew C-130s. I think he's the only one. We'll check into that. Maybe Chris Christie from New Jersey. Maybe he served in the Navy in his own mind and as a chef or something. Who knows? We're not really friendly with Chris Christie. But in any event, your point is well taken. If it's 1938 and you're looking at the horizon and your eyes have any clarity, you know you're in serious shape. How do you turn your head? Same thing with us. Once 9/11 hit, the clarity of necessary for sight to see occurred in a lot of people. Now, many of you have put your heads in the sand because your eyes are too clear. You know who the enemy is. You know it has something to do with Islam. You're hesitant to cast some sort of generic critique or condemnation on a religion. And so there's a hesitation. We understand that. But we argue very effectively here that you ought not look at Islam as a religion per se. It is unlike Christianity, Judaism, Mormonism, any of these other more traditional religions. Islam started and will continue and will always be a military political movement initially. The religious component is an existential element that fuels the religious political drive behind Islam. It must conquer land. As a Christian, I see nowhere in my doctrine, as someone familiar with Jewish doctrine, I see nowhere in Jewish doctrine, you must control all the land on the earth. You must take control and subject people to your doctrine. Judaism doesn't say that. Christianity doesn't say that. Islam teaches that necessarily. That's the clarity by which we see 1938, 2015. Thus the
I got the answer, Tom.
What is the answer?
You're never going to believe it.
Go ahead.
The one who has, oh, it hurts to even say this. The one who has the most military experience out of all the people who have declared is South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. 33 years.
33 years?
Yeah, he actually served, apparently, according to this article. And
he did serve, because I heard his acceptance speech the other day. You need somebody with military experience.
And the only other one.
What was he, a clerk?
No, he's in the Air Force, apparently.
No, I read his background. I'm really curious.
An interview with Daily Caller, Graham, a South Carolina senator who has been in the military for 33 years and is in the Air Force Reserve, said he doesn't think presidential necessity needs military experience, but argued it's an asset. Now, also, the only other person that has military experience is your governor from Texas,
right?
Perry.
Perry.
Nobody else has any military.
What did Graham do in the military? Now you got my curiosity up.
Is it Air Force, apparently?
What did he do? Did he fly F-16s? That's pretty admirable.
I don't want to read about Lindsey Graham. Come on, nobody's going to vote for him.
No, this is bothering me. I'll find out real fast.
No, I got it right here. I just don't want to read it. I'm just discussing.
No, just what he did in the Air Force. Did he serve in combat?
Oh, God.
That would make me look differently toward him. Not really.
Not really.
If he served in any significant way in the military and he still has these viewpoints on how to fight this war, then he's seriously flawed in his understanding.
Yes, he's a seriously flawed individual. I didn't want to go there, Tom.
Okay, I'm going to look it up.
We get more important fish to fry on this one.
I am curious about Lindsey Graham. I'm learning my new computer here. Well, it's not new, but it's a computer. Early military service, active duty in '84, graduated, went to the Air Force, went into the Air Force in '82. Judge advocate.
Oh, he's a JAG officer?
Oh.
All right, that makes sense.
Okay, he's a lawyer. Okay, served in Iraq as a reservist in active duty in 2007. How long's he been a senator?
I don't know. He's
long time.
I know. What did he do? Go in the military when he's 13 or something, or what?
1992, elected to the House. 94, he came in as a congressman.
He seems like he's been there forever, though.
That's 94.
20 years.
That's 20 years. Yeah. So he was serving in Iraq.
Must have been Iraq 1. Way back
No,
when.
2007.
Oh, came on the reservist? How?
Graham served in Iraq as a reservist on active duty for short periods during April and 2 weeks in August of 2007. Very interesting.
Okay, Tom, do you take back everything you said about having to serve in the military to be president?
He actually retired from the Air Force.
Yeah.
Wow. That's impressive. I'm impressed.
Well, yeah, right. Yeah, Lindsey Graham-nesty, oh my God. I know. God, you just shoot me,
Well, I'm impressed. I'm impressed that he put the time in. And
that's the same Lindsey Graham we asked to him at the last presidential election, the 2012 election. And we asked him about who was the Muslim Brotherhood. He had no clue. He had no idea who the Muslim Brotherhood, what's this, what, care who?
Yeah, the shocking part is that with this kind of background that he has, I'm going to look into it a little more, he should be teaching us stuff on this issue.
Yeah, especially
and leading the way on this issue. That's certainly not happening. All right, so again, for the sake of those who are trying to figure out your way on this fight. We have right now 517 days until November 8th, 2016, when Lindsey Graham is going to be running for president. But very, very important to recognize that in order to select anybody, and I think if Hillary is the choice on the opposition side, any of the Republicans are a better choice than Hillary. And I don't really have a person that I'm favoring right now. The people I'm favoring aren't in the race yet. But doctrinally, the Republican Party ought to do a better job, though we're losing a little bit of faith, many Republicans, on fighting the jihad, standing with Israel, fighting the left, than they're doing right now when they control the House and the Senate. But we have 517 days. And part of what we do on this show, folks, is to activate people to get involved. One way in which you need to get involved, a couple things we're going to be doing. We're going to mobilize Christians in key states, the swing states, educate Christians to get involved in the political process. We think that's critically important, and we're looking at something like out of 100 Christians, 50% are registered, and only 50% of them, 25, actually vote. Here in Florida, out of 12 million registered voters who are Christian, they marked Christian on their census in 2010, at least 3 million did not vote. You got to get out and vote. And the bottom line is that serious Christians who believe in God, who believe in Jesus, who believe in the Bible, are going to support Israel when they understand their theology and they understand the issues. If that's true, and if point number two, Israel, this should be fine. If Israel is going to be at the center of Islamic jihad worldwide, which we know it is, why do you think we take missions, groups of activists back and forth to Israel, taking them behind the scenes with the IDF, intelligence folks, and other places, and get them trained up to be advocates of standing with Israel? If Israel's going to be targeted by the jihadis, particularly Iran, between now and November 8th, 2016, why November 8th, 2016? Very simple. Political calculus. The bad guys look and they see who is going to support Israel less, Obama or Ted Cruz, Obama or Lindsey Graham, Obama or Rick Perry, Obama or Marco Rubio. They will conclude every single time. Somebody? David?
I'm busy.
You're doing other stuff. Tell me when I got to change the batteries. I'll let you talk. Should I change them now?
No, hold on.
Okay. The bad guys do their political calculus and they say Obama is going to support Israel less. Therefore, we need to move against Israel while Obama still reigns, while he can use his strength of office, use his administration, use his power in the Senate, use his power in the House, even though it's mitigated, he still has power, to stop Israel's counter-attack against Hezbollah, against the Hamas, against the Islamic State, against whomever. Because the scenario that we have been designing and laying out is very simple. You have now Israel surrounded by Hezbollah to the north, Hezbollah to the northeast, the Islamic State further due northeast. Jordan is a mess, but for Israel's support. The Brotherhood is in that country, down the south. You got Egypt, which is working a little more closely with Israel, but the people of Egypt hate Israel. Al-Sisi standing because he knows to survive he needs Israel's help. Then you have the Hamas in Gaza, who's being infiltrated now by the Islamic State. You have Israel surrounded by Muslim enemies. Throw the Sinai in there, and you've got a no man's land. Israel could be fighting a war on all fronts, 360 points of the compass. If that were to happen, Israel's not a magical country that is in the movies and can wave a magic wand and beats its enemies. Though it has done a lot of that miraculously, there's still young men and women fighting, and they bleed and die. And there's limitations to what Israel can do because they have a tiny, tiny, tiny force, and their force is drawn from their population, and their population also runs their phenomenal economy. So you can't have an extended war in Israel. It would devastate their economy. They've got to be quick and brutal. When they're quick and brutal and defeat the enemy quickly, the enemy now has poised its fighting forces among civilians, knowing that on a counterstrike by Israel, little babies are going to die because the guns are right next to baby nurseries, and those babies are going to be held up in front of the UN building in the Gaza Strip or up in southern Lebanon, and the world's going to see a burned little baby and blame Israel and call for Israel to calibrate down its offensive against the underdog Hezbollah, the underdog Islamic State, the underdog whomever. That's when America is going to have to stand strong and support a government that tells Israel, no, go finish the job off. In war, people die, babies die. It's a sad fact, but less will die if more is done by Israel now than allowing these countries of evil to continue.
But
Now, how does Obama fit into that? If you got to be the war planner against Israel, you want Obama in office when you strike. You don't want any Republican, because the Republican movement in this country would tell the president, stand with Israel. That's what we're working for, folks, and you need to get Christians to get out and vote. Why Christians? Because they're the ones, that's the gold, switching the metaphor, that's the low-hanging fruit waiting to be picked. You can convince a Christian to vote intelligently for Israel more easily than you can convince a gay guy who hates Republicans, wants to marry his gay friend, couldn't care less about Israel. You got to go spend all that money and energy not getting a vote when you got a vote hanging on the vine.
exactly.
So,
And we were talking yesterday about how, in the how the Boston bombing, and how they're preaching this Islamophobia, how they're preaching all this different radical stuff coming from Abdul Rahman al-Amoudi, from all his cohorts, and they preach it on a daily basis, on an hourly basis about, and we were going to talk about the Islamophobia today, Tom.
yeah, the yesterday, look at that, 2 batteries. Changed without the audience knowing anything. Tricky we are. Here's my little battery pack.
Yep.
And we need to start a marathon, Mark, to buy the United West batteries. We're using rechargeable batteries. I think there are only 200,000 recharges. There's a little meter here. We're on 300,000. 300,000 recharges. They last about 10 minutes. I got to change them every 10 minutes.
Right.
Please buy us some batteries, please. We're called to the fight. The fight's going to increase. The battle plan by President Obama, seriously flawed. There's a way to win Islamic jihad. And more precisely at home yesterday, we dealt with the Boston Islamic Jihad Society. The actual name is the Islamic Society of Boston. Well, because they birth, nurture, and launch jihadis, we have renamed it Boston's Islamic Jihad Society. So we talked about that organization yesterday. Today we're getting reports back. We'll show them in the near future from our guys in the field. We're posting some on my Facebook page. You can go there and check them out. We'll get a full report Thursday when they're back in the studio. And we're seeing that the Boston Islamic Society, or the Boston Islamic Jihad Society, is a cauldron for Islamic jihad thought. And the Muslim Brotherhood organizations are involved in this. Knowing this and tracking these organizations, 2 weeks ago, we got involved in the Islamic Circle of North America's 40th Memorial Day anniversary convention. The convention was held on Memorial Day weekend. ICNA, Islamic Circle of North America, along with the Muslim American Society, MAS, they had a 40th anniversary, and they promoted it as the Memorial Day weekend 40th convention. And we were very curious as to what they were going to do post Charlie Hebdo. You guys remember Charlie Hebdo?
Yes.
January 15th, I believe it was. It was January, I believe the date was the 15th, where 12 of cartoon company, Charlie Hebdo's the name of a magazine, satirical. It's like Mad Magazine here in the United States. But they satire religions and politics and all of that. And they had satired Judaism, Christianity. They satired Islam. They drew the prophet, and they were ridiculed for that. And in January of 2015, 12 of them gave their lives for their cartooning. As a result, the Islamic world was happy. The Western world was sad. And there was a lot of noise about what is going on with these Islamic jihadis. Well, over against that background, back in January, Pamela Geller and a couple of our guys went to a Muslim Brotherhood event in Garland, Texas, called Stand with the Prophet, where the effort was to stand with Muhammad. This was a week after two jihadis stood with Muhammad in Paris and mowed down 12 people. This was an effort to stand with Muhammad, and we were very curious as to what they were going to say inside of that event, so we sent a couple of guys, and they were not allowed to go in even after we paid for tickets. Eventually, we were refunded our money, but they weren't allowed to go in to a public event on public property. Pamela Geller had the brilliant idea of having a free speech event featuring Muhammad art. She had that on May 3rd. We went to that. We live streamed it. And two jihadis out of Phoenix, watch where we're going. We're going from Paris to Garland, Texas, to Phoenix, the Islamic Cultural Center of Phoenix. Two jihadis from there, let's see, Elton Simpson and Nadir Sophie. They left Phoenix, drove 1,000 miles, came to where we were, took out Colt AR M4s. Those were the weapons. We have the police report now. Colt AR M4 carbine automatic rifles. I don't know if they were auto or not. We're checking into that. And they attacked the facility as they got out of the car. A Garland police officer and others, the SWAT team, shot them both down dead. Well, as a result of those guys getting shot down, Paris, Texas, Phoenix, two guys in Boston said, we got to do something about this. You see the commonality already of the Ummah, the Muslim family. We got to do something because our brothers were mowed down in Paris. Those two guys there were eventually killed. Our brothers were mowed down in Garland. We got to do something. I got a brilliant idea, said Usama Rahim to his cousin David Wright. And Mark, what was that brilliant idea? Do you remember?
Yeah, he said he wanted to go kill Pamela Geller. And he wanted to go kill...
But a particular way of killing Pamela Geller.
Chop her head off. And he also wanted to, what did he say, kill the boys in blue?
Yeah,
he had to behead the boys in blue?
Usama Rahim, he decided to behead Pamela Geller. He felt that would be an outstanding accomplishment from a jihad perspective, which he's right, it would have been, and from a jihad perspective. This is the cultural battle and the kinetic battle we're in. So he set out a plan after Garland. Now, the FBI was watching Usama Rahim for a couple of years because he was lighting up on the internet, identifying with the Islamic State, all of this. But after Garland, he got operational. He said, I got to do this now. And in his planning process, his operational planning process, he calculated that it was too difficult to behead Pamela. She is under
protection. She had
protection.
too much security.
And
she'd
she'd kick his ass anyway. She's a tough lady, let me tell you. So he picks a softer target. This is how sad the state of affairs is right now in the police world. He picks a softer target, the boys in blue, cops. Now, how could cops be a soft target?
Because they're unsuspecting. They're not continually looking around over their shoulder for people to whack. They're going to chop their head off. But Pamela is.
And not only are they not looking for people to chop off their heads, they're looking to help people who have a splinter, people who need, resuscitation, people who need kind care. When you do these domestic calls, you go in, and a lot of times it takes a counselor more than a police officer to calm the husband and wife
Domestic
down.
violence and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, cops are there to serve the public and to protect property, not to even think about getting their heads chopped off by jihadis. This is the new dangerous world we're in. What we've pointed to yesterday and what we're going to point to today is that there's a common theme as we here at WSBR Radio, 7:40 a.m. on your dial, 40 minutes after the hour. Tom Trento, your host. Enemies of the State, the show. You can watch the show. You ought to watch the show. TheUnitedWest.org, TeaPartyCommunity.com. You want to learn about this stuff, go to BareNakedIslam.com. Go to Citizen Warrior. Go to Jihad Watch, Pamela Geller's, PamelaGeller.com, David Horowitz's websites. There's a lot out there. We want to show you the connection yesterday on Monday's show between the Boston's Islamic Jihad Center, where there's about 10 jihadis now who are either dead in jail or hiding somewhere else, came out of this one mosque. And now we're going to broaden this out. Show you how the Muslim Brotherhood, ICNA, and MAS, Muslim American Society, how they had a convention 2 weeks ago to somehow get control, the management of the jihad story going on. Yes, Mark.
And one of the big ideas that we have today, and you were talking about it earlier, was that this is not ISIS who's radicalizing them. ISIS is the last straw. I mean, these people are not getting radical. They're going online. They're looking at how to implement their jihad, but they got radicalized. They got their, it's like going to first grade, second grade, third grade, fourth grade, fifth grade, all the way through high school, then going into college, and all of a sudden you're saying, "Oh, this guy got radicalized by the university." You go, no, he was radicalized throughout his whole process through the Boston area, and telling that your salvation is jihad, your eventual goal is jihad. This is the culture war we are fighting, and Boston is an epicenter. Bostanistan at this mosque, at this area, at this culture, so founded by an Islamic terrorist named Abdul Rahman al-Amoudi. I don't know. Maybe I get off my soapbox.
No, that's good. That's good. You're 100% right. And what we're going to start doing, folks, along these lines is we're going to reintroduce some words to our lexicon. This word radical, we've had enough of this term radical.
Yes.
Radical means different than the statement or the belief. So if you believe in God and you're radical, then you don't believe in God. You go, your belief is radical. It's completely different than the stated belief. If you believe in America and you're a radical, you don't become a firmer believer in American principles. You become against American principles. So radical means against something.
Is there such thing as a radical Nazi?
Yeah, I mean that's
an oxymoron.
No, it makes no sense. It's an oxymoron. So we're arguing the etymology of a word simply because somebody's used the word. The Muslims have used this word to separate. What's going on there, Mark?
I'll find out.
To separate what happened. Yeah, so did I. Go check that out. It was. We heard some noises.
We're always on high alert around here.
Everybody's fine. We're all fine. I'm fine. This concept radical. 44 minutes after. If you hold to American principles and you read the Federalist Papers and you really get into the principles of America, you understand it more and more and more. Are you a radical American? No, of course not. So
you're a devout American.
A devout American. So the word we want to introduce to replace radical Muslim is a devout Muslim. It's much more logically, philosophically, and etymologically consistent. Therefore, all the people trained at the Boston Islamic Jihad Center aren't radical Muslims, they're devout Muslims.
That's how they were trained.
We're going to look now today and for the next 2 weeks, we sent a team inside this convention, and we'll tell you how we do that in the days ahead so that you too can do it. And all we're going to argue is that the Islamic Circle of North America and the Muslim American Society are devout Muslims. Muslim Brotherhood leaders are devout Muslims. If you get nothing else out of this show today, stop using the word radical Islam. Replace it with devout Islam. Radical Muslim, devout Muslim. It makes more sense. If the doctrine is what the Islamic State is saying it is, and not what Chris Cuomo on Good Morning America, no, he's on CNN. Chris Cuomo on CNN is saying when he debated Pamela Geller the other day, when he said Sharia law has nothing to do with Islam, some ridiculous statement like that. What does he know about Islam? Let the Islamic leaders speak for themselves. Let Reliance speak for itself.
Well, and speaking of Reliance, and we talked about this yesterday at TAD, is the people who, and to prove it, okay, trustees of the Islamic Center in Boston, of the Boston Mosque, all right, Mr. Badawi, that book that Tom has right there off to his right, The Reliance of the Traveler, was signed by the Fiqh Council of North America, who Badawi is also a member of. And he signs it and certifies it as great Islamic law. Ones you should teach your children. Ones you should be taught in schools. Ones that should be taught in the mosque. I mean, how much more direct link can you get? That book, if you want to look at that book, that is a heinous book Tom has right there.
I know.
It's a Sharia, disgusting book.
All right, so the bottom line at 46 minutes after, if we're going to be accurate in identifying the enemy, understanding the enemy, and then responding in some way ideologically here in the United States, we got to recognize there aren't a radical Muslim is somebody who doesn't believe in Islam, okay? And the proper term is a devout Muslim. Let's go to an article published on Center for Security Policy, ICNA Mass in Crisis,
okay.
Islamophobia Works. This is a great, great title. Take a look at it right there on your screens, and for our audience in the automobiles or listening on the beach to our show at 46 minutes after. What a beautiful day in South Florida today. Isn't it great? Watch out for the sharks and the sea lice and the seaweed and the rip currents.
Sea lice?
And there's sea lice out there and all those things. Otherwise, have a wonderful day on the beach. What are you doing on the beach and I'm in this room in here?
Sea lice.
Lifeguard, New Jersey lifeguard, man. I lived on the beach. Got to get back there. In any event, the folks that went under are now producing some articles. One of them was published on Center for Security Policy's site. And for the people driving, I'm going to read for you some of the opening statements. Absolutely fascinating. The title is ICNA, Islamic Circle of North America. That's an organizing entity for the Muslim Brotherhood in America. And Muslim American Society, another Muslim Brotherhood organization, in crisis. Our team went under for 4 days, and they've concluded that these Muslim Brotherhood organizations that sort of used to rule the day in the civilization jihad here in America are in crisis. There's something wrong in Muslim Brotherhood world. And our team concluded Islamophobia works. That is fantastic. We can camp on that for a week. The smart Muslim Brotherhood leaders taking the lead from the homosexual community saw that one of the things the homosexuals had to do to become more mainstream, homosexuality 30 years ago was listed in the psychiatric manuals as a psychiatric disorder. Now we have the President of the United States saying, it's really a gift from God, these sort of things. But part of the cultural conditioning process was changing language that people use. This is commonplace when you have to move people in a particular direction. And the homosexual community said, people don't like phobias, anachrophobia, tristodecaphobia, all these different phobias. People don't like phobias. So let's create something and let's label somebody as having that phobia. Therefore, the person who has that phobia is defective in some way. If you're agoraphobic, agora is Greek for marketplace, phobia is a fear. You have a fear of people. You don't want to go into the marketplace where there's a lot of people. You have a defect as a person. If you're homophobic, you have a fear of homosexuals. You're defective, not the homosexual, but you are defective. So taking that lead, that linguistic lead, Muslims came up with Islamophobic.
From the OIC.
Islamophobia. And then they coined a term. I think the OIC coined it, right?
Yeah, they're the ones who initiated all the way from the top echelons of, because Islam is very hierarchical. They bring it all the way down from the top and spread it out throughout the rest of the
Organization of Islamic Cooperation now. What was it called
Conference.
Before that? What?
Organization of Islamic Conference, and now it's Cooperation.
Yeah, Conference, now it's Cooperation. They coined the term Islamophobia 10 years ago or whatever.
When it was Conference.
8 years ago. And now all you have to do is get the mainstream media who are
Buy into it.
They want to label people who aren't open-minded some sort of phobia. So with those two elements, green and red coalition, the left and the Muslim coalition, they started labeling people like Pamela Geller and Frank Gaffney and Daniel Pipes and Glenn Beck and everybody else Islamophobic, Islamophobia. And us, obviously.
Well, we're number 2 on the list.
Yeah, and they have an Islamophobia list every year and all that stuff. And there's this natural knee-jerk reaction to distance yourself from a phobia or to reject it or to repel against it. Not for us. We always kind of relished in it like, hey, that's what our name is today, fine, big deal. When you know what you're doing, you have confidence in what you're doing, you know you're right, you don't worry about what labels people give you. In fact, people that call me names are Trentophobes. What can I tell you? But we have noticed that the collective work of the Daniel Pipes, the Frank Gaffneys, the Robert Spencers, the Pamelas, the Act for Americas, all the people on the ground, the United West, Florida Sierra, all the people over all these years, all educationally working to expose Islam, Clarion Project, has worked. Whatever you want to call it, it's worked. Right now,
we're winning the argument.
We are winning the battle space of identifying Islam as having a violent, deadly nature. And those who Islam leaders, Muslim Brotherhood leaders, would say are leading this effort against them are Islamophobes, then we've concluded, and our team went in and concluded, that Islamophobia is working because the Muslim Brotherhood is on the run regarding a civilizational jihad in America.
We're seeing their numbers drop. We're seeing their rallies drop. We're seeing their support drop. And people are like, oh, I don't want to go part of that organization, man, because they're going to end up in jail. I've heard that many, many times.
Absolutely. And we're seeing all this death and disaster taking place in so many war theaters right now, led by Muslims worldwide, now spilling over into, Rigby. Remember Rigby was beheaded,
Yep.
Lee Rigby, by Muslims in London. We're seeing all these attacks, the Charlie Hebdo, Denmark attacks. We're seeing Australia attacks. We're seeing attacks all over by Muslims who have the same exact epistemological basis. I am doing this because I'm a Muslim, following the Quran, following Muhammad, following the Islamic State. And these are not disenfranchised, young, retarded Muslim kids. These are intelligent Muslims doing this with substantial careers and
who've been indoctrinated.
And you're seeing against that the Islamic Muslim Brotherhood machine in the United States trying to spin this coherent message worldwide that projects Islam. And Nihad Awad and others are going, that's not Islamic. That's not Islamic. Pretty soon, they're redefining their Islam into something that means nothing or has no value other than love your fellow man and we're going to fast for a month, in June. Islam means nothing else but that, which is absurd on its face. Thus the existential crisis.
Well, to highlight the reason why we're working is because we tell people, hey, years ago, say, hey, guys, there's something called the Muslim Brotherhood. You need to be aware of it. Oh, no, you're crazy. You're Islamophobic.
Oh, there's an organized group trying to overthrow the country.
They want to establish a caliphate. Oh, no, you're crazy. Oh, they want to be, you got three choices, convert, submit, or die. Oh, no, you're crazy. You're Islamophobic. Oh, you know what? Violence on the United States is going to start increasing over time. Oh, no, you're crazy. You're crazy. They're going to start shooting people. You can't draw Mohammed cartoons. Oh, no, you're crazy.
That'll never happen here. And that's happening. And now the traditional Muslim Brotherhood organizations are in crisis. I'm going to read now the article that's published in Center for Security Policy from people not to be named. We don't need to name them. All right, in the wake of violence, and here's the point we were just making at 55 minutes after. In the wake of violence, looting, and riots that swept across Baltimore, Maryland, the night of April 25, 2015, Muslim Brotherhood supporters from 38 states gathered in this virtual ghost town over a bloody Memorial Day weekend during which 29 people were shot, including 9 reported homicides. While the residents of Boston were reeling from their deadliest months since 1999, the 40th Annual Islamic Circle of North America and the Muslim American Society Convention revealed that Muslim Brotherhood leadership is also in a crisis mode. Why? Following the jihadist attacks against free speech in Copenhagen, Denmark, Paris, France, Garland, Texas, compounded by a litany of savage brutality from the Islamic State's campaign to conquer and subjugate in the name of a new caliphate. Atypical of past Muslim Brotherhood conventions, and the folks we had inserted in this one have been to several of them. They know of which they speak. We have been, us here today, in several of these. Atypical of past Muslim Brotherhood conventions, this most recent ICNA Mass Convention, this is Memorial Day weekend, just a couple of weeks ago, was almost despondent in tone and seemed surreal, while confusion emanated from the uncharacteristically subdued leadership, which completely overhauled the convention's themes at the last minute. They were going to go left, instead they decided to go right. Facing an identity crisis and public relations debacle, thanks to jihadist rampages at home and abroad, ICNA Mas tried hard to send a convincing message of love and peace to the non-Muslim Americans. Nevertheless, relentless pressure from Americans, both Muslim and non-Muslim, newly awakened, this is Islamophobia working, relentless pressure from Americans, both Muslim and non-Muslim, newly awakened to the shocking reality of Islamic rampages, as well as the frightening closeness of Muslim blasphemy code enforcers, clearly took its toll on this conference. Even the U.S. Brotherhood could not escape the stark reality that Islamophobia is real. It's reasonable, and it's spreading with every new beheading, every new crucifixion, every new execution, and every new jihad assault flashing across our screens. Did you get that, ladies and gentlemen? I'm going to read it once again. It is our big idea for today. Even the Muslim Brotherhood recognizes and cannot escape the stark reality that Islamophobia, our fear of Islam, which causes us to educate about Islam, is real. We are really educating about Islam. It's reasonable. Our teaching is reasonable. And it's spreading. Our teaching is spreading with every new beheading, every new crucifixion, every new execution, and every jihad assault flashing across our screens on CNN, MSNBC. Oh, no, wait, they don't show that. On Fox, on Al Jazeera. And I'll conclude with this. The Memorial Day 2015 Baltimore ICNA Mass Conference didn't change its programming because its leadership disapproves of the jihad assault wave. It changed it because Islamophobes like Mark Campbell and Damon and Alan and Gaffney and Claire and Boykin, I put that in there, are multiplying, denouncing the jihad narrative and turning against all who are perceived to support the global jihad movement. That includes ICNA en masse. And the bottom line is Islamophobia works, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening. Thank you for learning. Thank you for acting. Tomorrow, Extortion 17, we're diving in more deeply into the United States cover-up, and we're going to make the connections to Islamophobia here in the United States. See you tomorrow.